Hi everybody, it's Laura from Sweet Handmade Cookies. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm working on a set of birthday cookies for an 11-year-old, and I'm going to show you how I created these from start to finish. So the first thing I'm working on is the dough. I make a dough out of 6 ingredients. It's butter and sugar, eggs and vanilla, flour and salt. And the first thing I do is I mix or combine the butter and the sugar in my KitchenAid mixer. Then I add the eggs and the seeds from a vanilla bean. If you've had one of my cookies, you know that each one of them has tiny little flecks of vanilla bean seeds. Very delicious. And the next step now is I am adding the flour and salt. And then I'm going to mix this up. I usually cover the mixer with a towel, otherwise flour dust goes everywhere. And then I mix it up until combined. And here you can see that the dough is very stiff. It is perfect for keeping the shape of the cookies after I have cut them out and baked them, but it's a hard job for my mixer. The next step is to roll the dough, and I'm using a dough sheeter to do that here. I measure out a quantity of dough for each of these extra large freezer bags, and then I roll the dough until it is the desired thinness. And it works really well because my dough is so stiff. Working with a rolling pin on this type of dough is actually quite hard on the body. So this is a nice little relief. And then these bags get stored in the freezer until I'm ready to use them. I need about 20 minutes for them to thaw out well enough for me to be able to cut the shapes. And what I often do is I make the dough at the beginning of the week so that I can use it later in the week. And now it's time to cut the shapes. This is an order for 24 cookies, and my customer asked for it to be 16 custom jerseys, and the rest she wanted to have as soccer balls. So here I am cutting out the round circle soccer balls. And then I'm going to move on to a square-ish plaque. That's it there. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to print a design on the cookie, and then I'm going to put a soccer ball on top of that design. And it'll look like it is a soccer ball being kicked into a net. So that's a lot of fun. And then I'm moving on to the jerseys. There is the first jersey being cut. And then I take the scraps from the dough that I didn't use on this sheet of dough, and I'm going to put it back in the freezer bags. And then I will re-roll that dough to use again later. Because I don't use flour to roll out the dough, I can reuse the scraps without changing the taste of the cookies. So all the shapes have been cut, and I have now preheated the oven, and I'm getting these cookies ready to bake. I can place the cookies pretty close together. They don't spread like a chocolate chip cookie would, and I always bake my cookies on parchment, as you can see. And now that the cookies are in the oven, I am going to work on the royal icing. I actually didn't film myself making the royal icing at the beginning. That'll probably be shown in another video because I do it every single time I make cookies. But here I am getting some white icing ready. I actually put some white food coloring in there, and now I'm checking the consistency to make sure it's ready. I liked the consistency, and I moved that icing into a piping bag. And so on this tray are all the cookies that are going to be soccer ball cookies. I move all my cookies from the baking trays onto decorating trays, as I call them. And these trays never see the oven. They only ever see cookies that are being decorated. And so the way I flood a cookie is I start with an outline, and then I roughly fill in that outline. There's going to be some gaps, and that's fine. And then I sort of let off on the pressure that I'm putting on that bag of icing, but I still squeeze a little bit out as I take the tip of that icing bag and move the icing around to fill in all the little gaps that are left behind. And that's a great little technique. It's the secret. The secret is the consistency of the icing. If it's a perfect consistency, it'll smooth out just like glass on the top, but it won't fall off the edge of the cookie. And I use one consistency to outline and one consistency, and that same consistency to fill in. And then you saw me do a little tap on the edge of the cookie. That helps the icing smooth out just a little bit faster. And then if there's any air bubbles, I can pop them. And so then I just repeat that. It's outline and fill in, and then tap, 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 and move on to the next cookie. And it takes me about a minute and a half to a minute and a half per cookie. So this set alone took me about 30 minutes to flood. And so it's the end of day 1, and I'm just finishing up, coming back to the kitchen tomorrow. And so it's day 2. It's the morning of day 2, and I'm getting ready to flood all the Jersey cookies. I need to get them all flooded so that I can move on to the next step of adding the names and the other details to these cookies. But I wanted to make this video extra special, and so I alternated between flooding a red cookie and then flooding a black cookie, which is very not normal for me. I would normally just flood all the reds and then all the blacks, but this one had to be extra special. And so I use the same technique. I outline, and then I go back and I fill it in rather roughly, and then I go back in and move that icing around with the tip of the icing bag, squeezing to let a little more icing out where needed. And then I will probably tap that cookie against the edge of the cookie sheet to smooth the icing out, going back with a scribe tool if necessary. And I did this for the entire cookie sheet, of course. Finished all those cookies, and then the other 4 that are on a different cookie sheet that I didn't show. And then that meant all the cookies were flooded, and I could move on to the next steps. So the next part of the project is to make the soccer ball cookies, and I do that by using my projector to project the image of a soccer ball onto the cookie. I then use that projected image to trace the design. You can see me here first. I'm starting with the lines, and then I'm going to pipe in the outline of the shapes, the dark shapes on the cookie, and fill them in. And when I get asked, how are my cookies always the same, this is actually a very big part of the secret, having a projector and following that exact design each time. I've had this projector for well over 10 years. I really love it. It's always been so consistent. I'm now going back in with my scribe tool to tidy up any edges, straighten any lines, and pop any bubbles to make this cookie perfect. And I had 4 of these to make. So I don't have a lot of footage of how I created this cookie, and I'm going to give you the details. This was one of the cookies that was flooded in white, and I printed an image on it using my edible ink printer, and it was an image that I purchased from an artist on Etsy. I then added a white circle, and I used an edible ink marker to put on the lines of the soccer ball. And now it's time to personalize the cookies. I received a list of names from my customer. I took that list and I copied and pasted it into a Word document where I changed the font size, and I changed all the letters to uppercase. And then I printed out that list so that I could put it into my projector and pipe the names onto the cookies. The paper printouts, I reuse them for notes and planning and test prints on my edible ink printer before I finally recycle them. This icing is thicker than the flood icing I used earlier on this project, and that's important because it helps to keep the lines crisp and keep the letters from flowing together to become blobby. It's nice to have them look nice and crisp so that the names are easy to read. And it makes me happy to make these customized cookies. I know as a child I love to have customized items. I had a little door plaque that said Laura. I remember being in love with that. I think it's much easier nowadays to get customized items, but I think it's really special to get a cookie with your name on it. Special shout out to the moms who gave their kids 3-letter names. I especially love to pipe those. I'm teasing, of course. My kids don't have 3-letter names. And I have made some very large names appear on cookies. Hockey jersey cookies usually have last names. And I mean, some of them were hyphenated and were very long. But I made it work. Those kids got customized jersey cookies and they looked fantastic. So I am just working on finishing up the names here, and then I'm going to be moving on to the jersey number. You'll see me in a second. I'm going to use the edge there of my island to trim up my paper to stick in the projector. I'd have to stand up and get a pair of scissors if I didn't use the edge of the island. So that works. And now I'm putting an 11 on each one of these jerseys because the birthday boy is turning 11. And I think that's a great and fun way to acknowledge that. And so it's the end of the second day working on this set. And these cookies need a good 12 hours to dry. And so they're going to be resting overnight on this tray in the Sweet Handmade Cookies kitchen, and I will be back tomorrow to work on the packaging. Stay tuned. And here is the finished set. I love how it turned out. So it's day 3 and it's time to package. A few years ago, I switched from clear plastic bags to glassine bags for packaging my cookies. It's smooth and glossy, it's made of paper, and it is transparent. And so in addition to lots of great things like pH neutral, resistant to moisture, air, and grease, it's also compostable and recyclable. And that's really important to me and the philosophy of my business. And so each cookie gets packaged. I like to follow a little routine. You know, all the black jerseys go on the black jerseys and the reds go on the reds. And then once they're all in, I fold over the top of each bag twice. So I fold it and fold it again, and then I close it with a branded sticker. And so here's how the cookies look packaged. You can see exactly what's in the packages, and they're ready to hand out, say, as a loot bag or a gift as someone's leaving the gathering. But you can also unwrap them and put them on a tray to display. And so the final step in packaging is putting them into bags. I use handled brown paper bags. I really like the look of that. And actually, I find these bags much easier to handle than a box of cookies. And so then I like to make sure each bag is exactly the same. And for this one, I did like a red cookie, a black cookie, a soccer ball, a red cookie, a black cookie, a soccer ball going in the net. Jersey, jersey ball, jersey, jersey ball. Thanks for following along as I made this great set. I enjoyed the process. I hope you enjoyed watching the process. Follow my channel by subscribing and giving my video a thumbs up. I really appreciate you being here, and I'll see you next time.